Welcome to Check In with Jason Lauritsen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Each week, I invite someone who is leading the way in this work to join me for a conversation to both educate and inspire us. And this week, we are lucky to be joined by Jessica Winder. Jessica is the Senior Vice President of People at Colab Software, an HR executive, career coach, and author of The Hidden Gem Within. Known for challenging the status quo and sparking good trouble in people operations, she brings a no-nonsense approach to leadership development and talent empowerment. Jessica, that is one of my favorite sentences of a bio that I think I've ever read. So well done. As the founder of Hidden Gem Career Coaching, a keynote speaker, and a trusted startup advisor, Jessica is passionate about helping individuals and organizations unlock their full potential. Jessica, thank you so much for making time to join me.
Absolutely. Anytime I hear that sentence about good trouble, it makes my heart happy.
It's a good one. Well, and I should have I should have left in the third paragraph of your bio because we were just chatting about it before we started that you have a lot of good trouble in your house with two sets of young twins. So I have no idea how you are upright or how you have time to do this, but I am really grateful that you are here. Lots of good trouble in your life, it seems.
A lot of good trouble. I have 4 kids under the age of 2. So good trouble is like the name of the game.
Wow, that's your next book. Like how you got through that, I think is going to be your next book for sure. So
absolutely.
Well, let's keep building on getting to know Jessica a little bit. And I would love for you to tell us just a little bit more about the work that you do in your organization, if you would, please.
Absolutely. So as the head of people HR at Colab is a tech company out of Newfoundland, Canada, which, fun fact, I had never heard of Newfoundland, St. John's before I started with the company. Just so happened, I used to work with the CMO, and she reached out to me when this role came open, and I said, absolutely, let's talk about it. And I flew out there. At the time, I was actually 4 months pregnant. I flew out there in 9 hours to go talk to them and see, what's this company about? And it is an engineering software company. We have now moved our product into be very AI focused. So helping engineers do all the modeling, all the things that they need to do to get things from design to actually out in the floor. And so right now we have around 130 employees all over the world. There are about 10 of us in the US, most of the companies in Canada, but we just hired our first employee in Germany, and we're expanding all over. So remote first, everyone's wherever they want to be as long as the work's getting done. So yeah, my team, I have a small but mighty team. There's 4 of us, and we are looking to expand. So we're probably going to add another 50 people in the next couple of months. So yeah, we're full stream ahead.
Fast growth, global company. Awesome. I have not been to that part of Canada, but I've heard that it is breathtakingly beautiful.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Literally, they took me to a lighthouse where you could see off and literally see the whales in the ocean. It was like, where am I?
It's not easy to get to, but at least there's a payoff when you get there. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I am a sucker for a good origin story. So I am curious, how and why did you get into this work?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I started off as a recruiter. So 13 years ago, after I had my master's degree, I started out being a recruiter. And to be honest, it really was not something that I wanted to do or thought I would ever do. It was something that was just at the time I wanted to move to Houston. I'm a Texan. I wanted to move to Houston. And I had a friend that worked in recruiting, and she's like, hey, just take this 6-month contract. It was very flippant. Take this contract. You could do this. You could figure it out. And I had a person there, a mentor, who said, hey, I can teach you how to do all things HR if this is something you're interested in. And I basically followed her for 3 years. She literally was like, here's how to do payroll. Here's how to do every part of HR. So I truly became a generalist, and then decided, okay, I like this. I want to focus on culture. I want to focus on building. At the time, this was in oil and gas, so I had no concept of a startup world. And when I got our first taste of what it's like to be in a startup where you get to truly build and be the first to make all those connections, that was like the golden point for me of like, this is what I want to do. So this will be my fourth startup that I've been like first person in the role to build out the team. So instantly, my thought is like, I like to beat it from the beginning, build it out. And then I honestly, I kind of want to leave. Like once it's all set in motion, 3-4 years down the line, I'm over it. Like I want to go rebuild something else.
Yeah. There's a reason we got along immediately, because I feel that that's how I have always felt the same way. For someone that's a status quo buster, right? If you stick around too long, like you get to a place where things don't need to be disrupted anymore, right? Things are working. I need to go find something else to disrupt. And startup world provides lots of opportunities for things to be disrupted. And I like that. I can't imagine oil and gas, pretty big, pretty slow moving industry for the most part. So just the distance between when you have an idea and its implementation is so much more satisfying in small business. At least I always found in smaller organizations.
Absolutely. I will never forget when I worked in oil and gas. I remember I wanted to change one line in the handbook, and it took me 6 months of like talking to people and doing this and literally lobbying to change this one line. And then when I started at a startup, I remember my CEO coming to me and being like, "You asked me too many questions. Like, just do it." And I was like, "Oh, what?" Yeah, completely different mindset.
Yeah. You're like, I can do this. This feels good. This feels good.
Like I made a decision and it's done, completely different mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is it that keeps you in this work? What do you love most about the work you do today?
Ooh, I would say there's two things. One is the ability to mentor people and like bring them along with me. So there are two people in my career that I've met that I thought, you got what it takes. I'm going to help you. I'm going to mentor you and I'm going to bring you up. Both of those people are now, like when I met them, had never worked in HR. One of them had actually a social work background, decided she wanted to work in HR, had never done anything in corporate, is now like an HR director. So that gives me so much joy to say, like, let's figure this out, because somebody took a chance on me. To my point before, I had no background in HR, had no concept of any of it. And someone decided, oh, I can teach this to you. And so I feel very strongly about the ability to teach people how to do jobs, that you do not have to come in knowing everything, which I think is really a detriment. A lot of companies now, entry level, you have to have 5 years. Well, that's not entry. What does that even mean? So that's one part of it. And two, there is something to be said about the workplace and its impact on people's health, both physical and mental health. There's so many statistics behind your boss has a greater impact on your mental health than your partner. And I want to impact that for other people. Like I think your workplace can be a place of good. A lot of places are not, as we know, we watch the news, but that could be true. And I want to make that happen.
Awesome. Well, I'm with you. We're lots of work to do, but I'm glad that you're in it doing the work. So let's talk about what we're here, or what you wanted to talk about with me. I always just, I guess, peek behind the curtain for those that listen. Is we have what I call a pre-chat conversation where you and I chatted about. We kind of get to know each other, and then I ask you, what do you feel really passionate about right now? What do you want to talk about? What part of your work feels most compelling? And you said, I want to talk about fairness at work. I'm really passionate about this. And that was intriguing. That's not what I expected to hear, not what I would usually hear. So I was very instantly curious about, this is going to be interesting. So number one question I have for you is, why did you want to have this conversation about fairness at work?
To your point, I don't think it's something that people talk about a lot. And I think it comes up a lot for the HR team, because you are in this almost, I don't want to say purgatory, but kind of, where you're like, you need to please the company because you are an employee as well. But also the employees see you as you are there to help guide them, which you are. So you need to do both. You're on this razor's edge of, can I make the employees happy and also make the business happy and keep us moving forward and making money? And fairness comes up a lot in that role, because employees feel like they're being treated unfairly, whereas they don't have all the information you have about what the company is doing on the back end. So it's like you get to see behind the curtain, but you can't tell them things that you know. They just have to trust that you're being fair. And a lot of times there is no trust there. So then you're just not fair. And HR get this, we get this bad rap of like, HR's not your friend and we're not here for you. And although that, HR isn't your friend, but neither is finance, neither is any other department, but also they don't have to be your enemy. And so the whole concept of fairness and what that actually means in the workplace is so complex and not enough people talk about it.
Well, I love that you teed this up because you are absolutely right that it's something that you hear a lot about. We ask people questions about it in employee surveys, but yet we don't really talk about it. And my guess is, and we're going to get into this here in a minute, if I were to ask anyone that's listening a question of like, okay, what does fairness mean? Or what is your approach to making sure things are fair at work? I'm guessing we're not super clear about that. I'm guessing there's a lot of gray area. And so that's why it doesn't feel great to employees sometimes, I think, is because we're not clear. So I am curious to start there. For me, I always like to start with definitions or trying to get some clarity about what we're talking about. So when you're talking about fairness at work, I guess I'm curious to understand, what does that mean? How do you think about and define what fairness at work means?
Yeah. So this definition might make some people uncomfortable that are listening, but hear me out. I think of fairness as this is something that whatever it is, so whatever the topic may be, is that I personally am going to do for you what other people would have done as well, even if I can't tell you everything. So even if I can't tell you all the facts and how I got to this conclusion, trust that whatever I do for you would be done for somebody else, no matter their demographics, no matter how long they've been with the company, no matter their salary bracket, it would all be the same. And the gist of that is that a lot of people feel like, well, this person is treated differently because, and you fill in the blank, because they're an executive, because they are located close to the office, because they come into the office. Like all of those things get into the root of why people think things are unfair. And we all know this as humans. You compare yourself and what you're doing to other people and what you can see, not knowing all the things that come with that. And this comes up a lot with employee performance reviews or compensation reviews. And we can get into that. But you can't tell employees all the things that you have going on in the background, but they want to know that they're being treated fairly compared to other people.
They do. And I think that's the thing about this, as I've been thinking about it, that is complicated, right? Because and I'm curious how you approach this, because there's the one side, which is actual fairness, which is like objective fairness, that I'm treating you the same way that anybody else would get treated because of the conditions or circumstances or whatever. And it's in alignment with how we do business or what our values are, whatever that is. It's fair because it would be the same. But where it gets complicated is that the sort of measure of fairness is like, it's the employee perception of. So it's not whether it's actually fair, it's, do I think it's fair? Do I feel that it's fair? So I'm curious, if I don't have trust, or maybe I'm new, or maybe there's new people involved or whatever, how do you approach that when you run into because you're managing two different things. You're juggling, are we actually treating them fairly? Number one, but then how are we going to manage the perception of fairness, particularly when there's variables that we can't share?
Absolutely. So it's twofold in my book, because one is the manager, because I ask people to trust me as their HR leader, but most of the time they're not dealing with me on a day-to-day basis. So that comes with like a caveat. And a lot of people have had some type of negative interaction with HR at a previous company or something like that. Or it's just a perception from the TV shows that they watch of like what HR is supposed to do. And so I understand that. And I respect that. I kind of come into conversations knowing that part of it and that I have to earn their trust. It's not just going to be given to me. But then their manager also plays a big part in that, because that's the person that they aim to trust, because that's the person that's going to be doing their performance reviews, that's going to be reviewing their compensation. Like that's the person, quote unquote, in control, versus me as the person that's going to come in, whenever that person needs support. So I always caveat these things with like, I am here to support you, but the manager relationship is where you need to be trusting. And I empower my managers to say like, Why would you give me the power? I'd even said this to managers that I'm coaching. Don't have me be the bad guy. If you want to be a manager, that comes with giving promotion, and it also comes with doing terminations. So you can't just be the promotion, like the happy parent. You have to be, to my point about being a parent, like you can't just be the fun parent. You have to do the whole thing. So if you want to be a manager, you have to see all the way through from the good times to the bad times. And that is the trusting part, because if you only show up when it's bad, as in the HR team, you only call us in when it's bad, and the manager only does the things that are good, then there's no trust there because they see you as the bad cop.
Sure. Yeah. I guess there's just a consistency there. I also had a mentor that taught me a long time ago as a leader, and I now talk about this a lot when I'm training, is if they can't trust you to show up and have the difficult conversations, then they're going to have problems trusting you even in the positive conversations. Like when you give them recognition, it's like, okay, well, I don't know how much I can believe this if I can't trust you to tell me the hard things when they come too. So there's a consistency there as well. So we'll get into some examples here in a minute, but I want to give you a minute to talk about why you feel so passionately about fairness in terms of why it matters so much, and kind of what happens when fairness doesn't, like when you're not doing it well, when you're not doing it consistently, what are the consequences of that? What happens when you're not doing this well?
It erodes the whole culture, and people are not, to their own credit nowadays, everyone has microphones. They're not going to be quiet about it. So if someone is unhappy in any way, someone else in the company is going to know about it, or they're going to post about it. They could do a video about it. They could do whatever they want about it, and either take your brand from the employee side of it, which will then get to your customers, whoever they might be. The second part of it is, if it is true, then you're going to come from a place of like you're batting, your average is down, because now you have to build back up and people will not trust what's going on. So even the stance of telling people we made a mistake and this is how we're going to fix it, if there has been some trust broken or if fairness has been perceived as not going well, that will go a long way rather than let's just move forward. And that's kind of what I see a lot of times when I'm consulting with startups, is that they've made some type of mistake and their stance is let's just move past it. And they never address it. They never say this person has now made this comment, even though all the employees are talking about it. They just want to quote unquote move forward. Like just push past it and eventually it'll go away. And that's just not how it works. And I feel really passionate about this because as an employee, before I was in a senior level, I have seen things that I actually thought were unfair. And I knew information and I could not share with employees because even though I wasn't in a leader position, I was in HR. So I was privy to information that nobody else at my quote unquote level would have been privy to, but I couldn't say those things. So I have actually seen things that I thought were unfair when decisions were being made, like being in the room when people are doing performance reviews and they're talking about like, oh, well, should this person be promoted? Like, aren't they at the age that they might want to have a family? Or, things that you should not be talking about. And so being in those rooms, I now feel, now that I'm in a leadership position, that like, this is my chance to like right some of those things that I saw that were wrong.
Mm. I think this is a topic that really lends itself to talking through some examples. So I'm curious if you can share, if we maybe have one or two that we can kind of talk through of an example where you had a situation like this come up, where there was a fairness issue that you got involved in as an HR leader, and then let's talk through kind of what that looked like and how you resolved it. So do you have an example that we could dive into?
Yeah, I have a couple. I think let's start with the one that for most people is more obvious when it comes to performance. So I have been in situations, and this has happened a couple of times, where someone has been let go, they've been terminated due to performance. And their team, however, feels like it is unfair that like basically they're here today and they're gone tomorrow. They don't have the insight that maybe this person has been getting coaching for months. This person has been given like written instructions of this is how you can improve. This is what you need to do. And you obviously, once the person leaves, don't want to go back and tell the team that like, hey, this person has been on a performance improvement plan. We've done these things. We've gotten them coaching, because that person can feel like you're sharing too much about them. Like I would feel like almost like that would be slander if you do all of those things. So you put yourself, the leadership team is in like a really hard position. And I coach teams on this, and I've actually had to do it myself on what do you say to let the team know that you tried and this person just wasn't up to the standard that you needed them to be, while also respecting that this person needs to get another job. So you don't want to say anything negative about their performance, because even though they didn't work out at your company, they could work out somewhere else, you know? And so
Mm-hmm.
that is one of fairness, where like the team feels like something's unfair. The person knows what has gone on between them in the company, but you can't share that information.
Hmm. Where's the line there? Because I always find it interesting, because I think there's some tension there. So I'm just curious kind of where you find the line to be, because anytime someone's let go, there's always survivor guilt. There's always, even if it's a layoff, there's always survivor guilt. When it's performance, then everybody starts to freak out if they don't know the details or they don't know, because on some level, it seems like part of fostering fairness would be sharing some degree of the story around like, we worked really hard to try to figure this out, and for whatever reason we couldn't make it work, right? And that's not fair to the rest. It's not fair to them, not fair to the rest of the team. I'm curious how far where do you draw that line in terms of managing, because that's where the perceptive fairness comes in, right? Is managing their perception of what happened. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So in the most recent incident that I can think of for this one, we actually got the team together after this person left and said, like, we want you guys to feel like we can answer your questions, and we're going to tell you as much as we can without going into specific details. So we even told them that, like, this has been something we have been working on for 6 months. This is new to you, but this is not a new situation. For the last 6 months, we have been partnering. We have given coaching. We won't go into details on what the issue was, but this person was given support. And if you were ever in this situation, we would give you support too. And this is what support looks like. And so we went through like this person was getting weekly check-ins. They had numbers reviews. They had an external coach. So this is what support could look like, because what comes up is people feel like, if I start to slip, what would happen to me? And so we wanted to reiterate that if you were in this position, we would help you too.
Yeah. Well, and that also creates then the reality is too, like, we do this for people all the time. You don't even know about it most of the time, because people just get back on track and everything's fine. So no, that's a great example of how to balance really that, like, treating someone fairly, but then also managing the perception of fairness with the team that's left behind after the fact. Because all they know is their friend is no longer there.
Yeah.
And they've heard, I'm sure, lots of stories.
Yeah. And to your point, I do normally say, and there are people here right now that have been on implants and gotten better, and you would never know because they're still here. And we're not going to point those people out. But just so you know that there are people that go through this process and are successful, but you don't hear about that because they're still here. You know?
Yep. So you said you had a second example that's in a different context. I'm anxious to hear that if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like I said, performance is like one that makes people feel uncomfortable because it's more in your face. But a lot of times this also comes up when it's time for compensation reviews. So a lot of companies do some type of performance review throughout the process, throughout the year, whether that's annually, every quarter. However, a lot of companies that I've recently been do it twice a year. So every other quarter, they would do some type of review. In that review, you get a performance rating, whatever, the rating scales will do whatever they want. And then that goes to your compensation. Well, a lot of times now employees will talk about, like, I was scored a meets expectations. And then this person got exceeds. And then they say, well, look at me. I'm working all hours of the night. I'm doing, the hustle culture. I'm doing all these things and I got a meets expectation. And this person over here, I never see them online. They, I don't know what they do here, that whole mentality. Right. And they got exceeds. Why is that? Not knowing that this other person is going above and beyond doing all of these things. And so in this instance, I actually think it's important to have career maps or career goals that everyone can see. So the caveat to this is, if everyone can see what everyone's expectations are, then you have more of a leg to stand on as a leadership team. But if you do things in secret, like I've seen before, where performance, like, the steps to move up were not really shown to
Right.
anyone, then you're breeding this wall pointy. Whereas where I work at right now, everything is open. You can see everyone, like if you go look at the research and development team, I can tell you what the steps are to move up and what the expectations are in every single step. So it's open to everyone. People can go look at what my expectations are. So then it's very clear and it doesn't feel like a secret of like, why did they get
Sure.
this and I didn't?
Yeah. And you're putting it into the domain of like clear, measurable expectations against which you can
Exactly.
look at this thing and measure it, because otherwise when we don't define that, they make up their own criteria based on what they think is important, which may not actually be, like to your point, like we never ask you to work 20 hours,
No.
20 hours a day. So like that is actually not what we want. And if it's taking you that long to get your work done, we have another problem. We need to talk about all kinds of things. So I'm curious how much of when you think about fairness and an approach to fairness, how much of it you think is attributed back to like how you handle things? Because my experience was always, it seemed, at least it's been a while ago, I spent 9 years of my life in corporate HR, but it seemed like people generally would get more upset about how they were treated more so than what actually happened. And so it's
Absolutely.
like, even if the outcome wasn't what they wanted, if they at least felt like they were treated with some dignity and they felt like they were told what they could be told and the person had some respect for them, they were less likely to be screaming, "This isn't fair" at the end, because they didn't feel like they were slighted. And I'm curious how, if that's true for you, how do you coach or develop your leaders to prevent that or to help support an environment that feels more fair?
Absolutely. So yes, that is exactly what I've seen is people, the lack of information or the increase of secrecy breeds this mistrust, this nothing is fair or everyone's against me. Whereas the oversharing, I literally coach my teams overshare. Tell information that you don't even think they care about and say it more than once because why not? Everything that can be shared, you should share is my mentality from an HR standpoint. Like there's a line of things we can't, but everything over that, share it all because why not? Because when you don't, people are going to make up. So they're going to connect the dots no matter what. Help them connect the dots with the information you can give them. And even say, I can't share this information with you right now, but I can give you what you need in a different time frame. So give me by next week, I can share more information on this. Even giving time frames instead of just saying, I can't tell you. Yeah, or I've been in meetings where someone had said, this is none of your business. And that doesn't feel right when we're all trying to go towards the same goal for the company. And two, it's shutting down those thoughts of innovation because what if the person is coming to you because they actually have an idea, not to be nosy, but they need information to then give you their information. So there is a way to do it, but you have to share. If you don't share information, you will feed feelings of mistrust.
Well, I think this kind of dovetails into my next question, which is a situation where I think in our pre conversation, you've been in this. I think a lot of people, as we're writing kind of this economic roller coaster, are increasingly finding themselves where you have a business that's rocking and rolling, and then something happens, the economy turns, things happen, and suddenly the business is now being squeezed or the business is struggling. And so we're having to cut back on expenses, or maybe we're going to have to do some layoffs. I think you had, as I recall, some pretty specific opinions about kind of how you balance being fair to both the business and the employee in that time. So what kind of advice do you have for HR leaders that find themselves in that spot where they have to navigate those times?
Yeah, the unfortunate layoff times. I've had to do, I think probably 3 or 4 times I've had to do layoffs. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's part of being in a startup is that, things are great and then, they lose a client or things happen and it has much of a bigger impact when the business is small. So I have definitely been in those situations and I've seen it go well where it was a respected, everyone felt like they got what they needed. And I've seen it go bad where it was so secretive that people for weeks knew that it was coming, but they just had to sit on pins and needles and wait. And that's when it becomes a is this fair how it's being done? So I sat in those meetings before where people are being selected, and I've always been the person to like, I want a true explanation of why. Like, why this person? Is there anyone else? And if so, why Jane over Robert, or why this over that? Like, I want detail, detail, detail. And a lot of times what comes up is, I've heard in many meetings where people say, well, the low performers go first. But my question to that is like, are they true low performers? Is something going on in their life? So this comes into fairness. Is something going on that they're being coached on? Is there something outside of work? Is there like, what could we be doing to support them? Because just because someone is a high performer, if we're talking about business impact, what does that mean? And so do you still need that person if you don't have this client? So the fairness of it all, like, what does it mean to you to be fair when you're laying off people, instead of just saying this whole, these are all underperformers. But also, if all the underperformers are gone, you still need specific people in specific jobs. So, there's so much rhyme and reason to it. And so I just seen it go bad when people just take this very flippant, like, just get rid of these people that previously were rated low on their performance review. You're not really thinking about the larger business impact, because somebody still needs to do work.
Yeah. And I think it's like, that's where you get caught in, like, they just want it to be over with. Right.
Yes.
And doing it in a fair way is harder. It requires more thoughtfulness and more investment of time and that. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really helpful, is that it just takes a time and commitment to doing the right thing, it sounds like, is what's really the key.
Yeah. And I have been in a situation like that. Well, I will say that I asked why I wasn't on the list. So I went through the list and I said, so why not me? Like, why not get rid of me? And they're like, well, no, basically we need somebody to do this, first of all. And then the second part was like, well, like, they gave the reasons. And I'm like, so I even think you should go that far. Like, why not you? Like, if we're going to go through the whole company, put your name on the list,
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That takes the right kind of leader. And there's just not a lot of those leaders out there, because doing the right thing means doing the right thing, whether it impacts you or not. So, all right. So the last question on this topic I want to ask, and I'm going to ask it because I know you have this kind of this dual life professionally, where on the side you're doing all this career coaching and career advice. So you're advising individuals as well. And so I'm curious, what advice do you have for an employee who is in a situation where they think they aren't being treated fairly, or they have some concerns about the fairness with which they're being managed or led, or what their opportunity looks like? How would you advise someone?
My first thing would be to write down what it is that you think is unfair. So write it down. Is it compensation? Is it the way that projects are being given? Is it the performance process? Whatever it is, write it down so it's very clear to you what you think is unfair. And then write down why. Do you feel like it's something about you, something about your manager, something about something you've done in the past? Like, what is it that makes you feel like something's unfair? Because when you have that, then you can lead into the questions you can ask to get to the bottom of it. But if that's not clear, if you're all over, I've had employees come to me with this, and it's kind of like they just say everything's unfair. I'm like, but what? Give me an example. Like, you have to come with, this is the example, and this is why I think this is happening. Can you give me more information? And go into it knowing that maybe they can't give you everything, but they can explain maybe the reason that the things are the way that they are. And use AI to help you. So I would say do all that and write it down and put it in AI and ask it, what questions can I ask to get to the bottom of why this is happening to me? And it will give you some questions to ask. So use the technology to help you too. But the first step is, what exactly do you feel is unfair? Just saying everything is unfair and everyone in the company is unfair and leadership is unfair gets you nowhere.
Yeah. And it's hard to get an audience if that's the approach you're bringing, right? If you want someone to really get into it with you, that's great advice in terms of just getting clear. Like, what actually is it that you are concerned about? That's really helpful. Okay, well, let's transition. This is super interesting. I feel like there's so much more that can be talked about, but I hope this is at least a good thought starter for for you if this is a topic that's kind of something that maybe you know is there, but you haven't dug into. So hopefully this gives some good meat. I have a couple more questions for you before I let you off the hook or off the hot seat today. The first one is, what is a big challenge or obstacle that you're wrestling with at work right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. I have several. I think one of them for us right now is we are going through a major growth and thinking about that in terms of how do we keep the caliber of employees that we have, which people are great, they're doing their job, they're exceeding expectations, but hire fast. So we're going through quote unquote a hiring boom. And when people hear that, sometimes they think we can lower our standards. And our CEO is very adamant that we will not be doing that. We have like what we call a hell yes mentality. Either it's a hell yes or it's an absolute no. But that means we are slower to hire people. Our hiring process is much slower. So that's something that we're fighting, is that we need people in seat, but we need them to be at a certain level. And we are not willing to give that up. So you can't go fast and hire people if you want the process to go the way it's been going. So that's something that we're really having a hard time with, is that we are hiring, but it takes us quite a bit of time. Our average time to hire is around 60 days. So, that's giving encounter like all the people that are traveling and all those things. So that is keeping me up.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had any breakthroughs on that, or is there anything in particular that you have been trying as a solution that is helping?
Right now, we have just signed for a sourcing tool, because the top of the funnel is where we get a lot of candidates. Some of them are just not meeting the expectations. So we need basically less time on that and more time having the conversations and actually having my recruitment team actually have talk to candidates. So we will be implementing that next week, actually.
Awesome. Well, good luck. I hope it helps. All right. My last big question is one that I ask everyone, because I always love the kind of the optimism in it. But when you think about work, and I say like work, capital W work, not work necessarily at your organization, but just work in general, 5 years from now, what is one thing you hope will be different then than it is today?
I hope that on the theme of fairness, I hope that leadership teams will take fairness into account more than they do right now. So I think right now it's an afterthought instead of being front of mind when you make any decisions on, is this fair? Personally, before I make any decision that is going to impact someone else, I ask, is this fair? And a lot of people aren't doing that. So maybe that's what I want. I want it to become a part of the conversation of, this is not fair. Because a lot of times when I'm in rooms, I'm the only one that will say that out loud. Like, this isn't fair. A lot of people use other words. They don't want to say fairness because then they think, all these big words like discrimination and, all these other things that leads to. But just saying, is this fair?
Well, the reason you end up using those big words like discrimination is because you won't ask the question, is it fair, right? More often. So I think that's an awesome practice. And I would love to see that as well. Well, Jessica, as we wrap up, I like to end with a one-word check out. So in one word, how are you feeling right now as we wrap up our conversation?
I'd say energized. I'm super energized to keep pushing forward. I know that change is slow sometimes in HR, but I do think that the change is coming.
I am feeling curious. This conversation has made me think about things I haven't thought about in a while. So it's been a really good thought provoker for me. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Well, Jessica, this has been a great conversation. I love it. Thank you for raising such an interesting topic and such an important topic. I've really enjoyed this. It's been a good learning experience, at least for me, and I hope that is true for everyone. Appreciate you making time. If someone wants to connect with you to learn more about you, where is the best place to do that?
I would say on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn every day. So Jessica D. Winder, or on my website, hittinggemcareercoaching.com.
Well, and I would say for those that are listening, go out. You can find her book kind of anywhere books are available, The Hidden Gem Within. I would also recommend, I started receiving your newsletter, which is chock full of like good trouble, status quo,
Yeah.
challenging career advice. It is really good and really, really provocative and really useful. So would highly recommend you do that as well. So we'll put all of that stuff in the show notes. So if you want to connect with Jessica, we'll make it easy for you to do that. And thank you for listening. I hope that you can take some of this back. I hope at a very minimum that you will take the practice to say, is this fair as you are considering a decision as a leader, as an HR executive? I think that would go a long way. That is really, really good advice. So take it back, make a difference, and please remember to check in with those who matter most to you. Might be the most important thing you do today. Until next time.